Hello, and welcome to Life Diaries, a space where the pages of life open up, one story at a time. These are tales written by experience, spoken from the heart. Take a moment for yourself, and let's begin. Alice rushed through the rooms, hastily gathering whatever came to hand. Her breath was ragged, her heart pounding rapidly from agitation. Just moments ago, the clinic director had called, puzzled by her sudden departure. Of course, they had let her go immediately, but questions had rained down from all sides. Right now, she simply couldn't explain anything, nor did she want to talk to anyone. Alice had met Victor while doing her residency at one of the city's clinics. Feelings had flared unexpectedly, and they hadn't resisted, soon getting married. After she got a job at the outpatient clinic, they decided to wait on having children. Alice was just starting her career, and then somehow it wasn't the right time, although she had hinted to her husband about her desire. Alice became lost in these memories, and tears of Obida and burning anger immediately welled up in her eyes. Her friend Karina turned out to be the cause of it all. Only yesterday had Alice learned that Karina was not at all who she pretended to be. Alice worked part-time at the clinic, taking night shifts. Yesterday, she had planned to spend the full 24 hours there, but the shift was canceled. Rejoicing, Alice hurried home to surprise her husband. But when she quietly entered the apartment, she heard a woman's laughter. "You amaze me every time, really. I don't know what you'll come up with next." It was Karina's voice. And Alice's husband, Victor, answered her in a tender tone. "You know, you always inspire me. I think about you every minute. I want you to be happy." He added, "I'm ready to do anything, just so you're not disappointed, my dear. You are my universe. I'm ready for anything for the sake of your smile and a kiss." Alice slowly backed away towards the front door. She had heard enough to understand the true state of affairs. Sounds of kissing came from the room, and Alice didn't want to see what was happening. She quietly left the apartment, without locking the door behind her. She spent the night at the clinic, without closing her eyes. And now she had returned home only for her things. She had decided to disappear, and during the night she had figured out exactly where she would go. She had inherited a small house in a village from her great-grandmother. None of her current circle knew about it, because many years ago Alice had left the village to live with her father in another city after her mother passed away. Only after her great-grandmother's passing had she come for the funeral and learned that the house was left to her. It was a perfectly decent little house that had stood empty all this time. Alice decided to go there. All that remained was to gather the essentials: clothes, documents. No one would find her there. It was the perfect refuge. She didn't want her husband or her so-called best friend to know her whereabouts. Let them think she had disappeared, or that something had happened to her. "My soul is no more," the girl whispered softly, feeling the emptiness inside. An hour later, everything necessary was packed. Alice stopped in the middle of the room, looking around at the familiar surroundings. She felt that she would never return here. Here she had been happy, but here she had also learned of the betrayal by the two people closest to her. This place had ceased to be her quiet haven, turning into a dirty swamp where disgusting things were done. Alice felt nauseous from the surge of feelings and hurried to leave the apartment, heading into the unknown. 2 days later, she was already in the village. Before getting on the transport, she threw away her old SIM card and bought a new one. She didn't want to be bothered by calls from Victor, Karina, or anyone else. If necessary, she would contact the clinic herself to inform them of her plans. But as she traveled, the thought grew stronger. Should she give up her medical career altogether? The actions of those close to her had knocked the ground out from under her feet. Alice didn't know how to live on. She only understood that she wanted to radically change her way of life to somehow recover. Now she was trudging down a country road with a suitcase. She had reached the village by bus, but there was still a long way to go to her great-grandmother's house. A local resident had given her a ride, but only to the right lane. Now she was making her own way to her new refuge. When she finally arrived, her heart immediately felt lighter. Before her stood her great-grandmother's house, which now belonged to her. Here she could hide, and no one else would hurt her. She opened the creaky gate and entered the yard. Alice stood for a minute, then slowly closed the gate behind her, leaving all sorrows and anxieties behind, and stepped towards a new, such unknown life. 2 weeks later, Alice was slowly recovering. During this time, she managed to get acquainted with her neighbors. They all turned out to be surprisingly kind and helpful people. They helped her with the house, even found workers who quickly put things in order. The furniture inside was perfectly usable, and the yard also soon became clean. Alice even started smiling, because she couldn't react any other way to such sincere kindness from strangers. They didn't know her at all, she was a stranger to them, but in 2 weeks they had done more for her than she could have expected. Her wounded heart was weeping tears, but the wounds were quickly healing from such gentle treatment. And something else happened that made her realize that she wouldn't be able to hide her profession. She had wanted to give up medicine entirely, to become, for example, a milkmaid or a farm worker. What else one could do in the village, she didn't know yet, but she intended to find out. But she wasn't given that opportunity. In the morning, her neighbor Hope, who had helped her the most with settling in, rushed over. Hope was agitated and spoke quickly. "Good morning, Alice, dear. Forgive me, darling, I won't be able to help you today. I urgently need to go to the city." She continued, "My Sophia is completely ill. Her stomach hurt for several days, and she got really bad last night." Hope lamented. "She's throwing up constantly. She can't even drink. I'm so worried, and we don't have a doctor here." She added, "Since the last one left, they haven't sent anyone else. I don't even know who to turn to. I'm terribly worried about her. She's lying there pale, breathing somehow heavily. Her eyes are wild." Alice said anxiously, "She's dehydrated. She urgently needs an IV." She explained, "She probably ate something bad, but it's necessary to quickly remove the intoxication." Hope threw up her hands. "Alice, dear, what words you're saying. Where would we get an IV here in the village?" She complained, "And even if we did, no one knows how to use it. Our village folk can't even give a simple injection, and you're talking about an IV." Hope concluded, "We'll take her to the city. They'll treat her there, my little one." Alice immediately ran into the house for her medical bag. She had everything she needed. She had taken it just in case, although she hadn't planned to use her skills here. She gave the girl an IV, and Sophia immediately felt better. She was able to drink water, and by evening she looked quite decent. They didn't have to go to the city. The next day, the entire village knew that Alice was a doctor. She couldn't hide her profession. Alice realized that when the girl got better, she felt incredible joy. At that moment, she felt that only medical work brought her such deep satisfaction, which nothing else could give. And a month later, Alice was already working at the local medical post, which had been empty for a long time. None of the doctors wanted to waste their lives sitting in the village. And that was exactly what Alice needed, to hide from her past life and be useful to kind and responsive people. Several months passed, and Alice came to a call for a girl who had had a fever for a long time. A pleasant-looking man met her. "Hello, Dr. Alice," he said. "You don't know me yet, but I've heard a lot about you," the man continued. "My name is Paul. Please help my daughter," he asked. Alice only glanced at the man briefly, noting his beautiful eyes, but immediately chased away extraneous thoughts. This was all she needed. She had been alone for too long, but not to the extent that one glance would drive her crazy. "Take me to her. I'll examine the girl," she said in a businesslike manner. 10 minutes later, she was writing prescriptions on a piece of paper. "She has bad wheezing," Alice explained. "I'll write down the names for you now. You'll need to go to the city to buy them, and a couple of other medicines." She added, "And perhaps you could call your wife? I'll tell her how to treat the little one. I have a couple of secrets I'll share, and the girl will recover quickly." An awkward silence hung in the air, and Alice looked at the man in confusion. He was looking at her, his brows furrowed. After a minute, he said, "I don't have a wife." Paul continued, "I'm raising Sophia myself." He fell silent, swallowing a lump in his throat, and quietly added, "My wife. During childbirth." Alice immediately looked at the blonde angel lying in bed. Her blue eyes looked at Alice so trustingly. Alice felt her heart clench in her chest with pain. How unfair life was. She had begged her husband for a child, but Victor didn't want one, probably because he was already having an affair with Karina, and Alice had dreamed so much of a baby. And here before her lay a girl who had never known a mother's affection, and encountering such injustice was unbearably painful. Alice looked at Paul again, and she felt an unfamiliar feeling stirring in her heart. Perhaps sympathy, perhaps anxiety, perhaps understanding of his pain. And she almost drowned in his eyes, which were looking at her so intently. "You know, I'll come every day then," Alice decided. "I'll do everything necessary myself. You just buy the medicines," she continued, "and I'll make sure Sophia is back on her feet quickly." Alice gently stroked the girl's head and added, "Right, princess?" Sophia gave her a weak smile in return. Paul also smiled, and Alice noticed how much father and daughter resembled each other. "I don't know how to thank you," Paul said. "How about I come pick you up every evening so you don't have to walk here yourself?" the man suggested. Alice wanted to refuse such kindness, but immediately changed her mind. She hadn't talked to men in so long, and this Paul was so pleasant, polite, and his daughter was such a sweetheart. What bad could happen if he came to pick her up? She simply wanted to talk to someone other than patients and neighbors, to ask him about the girl. "Okay, I'll give you the address then, Alice began. "I know where you live," Paul interrupted her and immediately fell silent. Alice looked at him and saw something in his eyes that slightly embarrassed her. He was a handsome man, but she had already had one like that in her life, who had trampled her heart. She immediately regretted agreeing to his offer, but there was no turning back. She had suggested it herself. Time passed. Alice was sitting on a bench in front of the house, drinking fragrant tea. Strong male arms wrapped around her from behind, followed by a gentle kiss on the cheek. Alice closed her eyes and smiled. "My love, do you actually have a day off today?" Paul whispered in her ear. "You are mine, and only mine." Alice didn't have time to answer before Sophia jumped off the steps with a squeal. Paul sighed with a smile. More accurately, not mine, but ours. Alice smiled, remembering the events of the past year. It had been the most wonderful time in her life, because she had met true love. Paul had melted her heart, and it turned out that he had noticed her long before she noticed him, and had fallen in love at first sight. His daughter Sophia's illness had brought them together. And it had also been a difficult time because she had had to face her past. For the sake of Paul and Sophia, she decided to put a definitive end to her previous relationship. She went back to where she had left Victor and her former friend Karina. It turned out they hadn't really looked for her. They were already living together. The signing of all the documents was just a formality that had to be observed. Everything was done quickly and without unnecessary words. While Alice was settling matters, Karina wanted to talk to her, but Alice didn't utter a word. And her ex-husband Victor didn't even try to justify himself, only saying that life is unpredictable. That was the last time Alice saw them. Now nothing connected her to her past life. She could fully dedicate herself to the man she loved, and his daughter, whom she had met thanks to her great-grandmother's house. She sighed, releasing the last remnants of unpleasant memories. Alice stroked Paul's hand. "We still have so much time ahead that I'll have time to bore you," she said with a smile. "You are my life," the man replied. "I love you, and you will never bore me," he added, holding her tightly in his arms.